My mom came in and talked to me, and her exact words were, "Son, secrets have been killing our family." Right? And this was, I was, 52 maybe at this
Mhm.
time, and she told me that um, that my heritage wasn't what it had been presented all these years. So, I looked at her and just, a piece of me broke. And I told her that I've been alone all my life.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Let's Heal with Beth Jones. That's me, your host. My mission is to bring the power of healing to trauma and abuse survivors. That's why every guest on this show will bring you an amazing story of healing in action. So come on, everyone, let's heal. Welcome to this episode of Let's Heal. I'm Beth, your host and healing mentor. This is an exciting day because we're expanding our distribution of this show to the Brave Hearts TV network, and I have a very special guest. Sometimes the road to love requires us to confront the parts of ourselves we're most afraid to look at. For me, that meant facing an unconscious bias I didn't know I had. And for my guest, it meant doing the deep healing work that finally released him from feeling like a fraud. I'm thrilled to introduce you to Eddy Anderson, a man who has lived 1,000 lives, from a superstar college athlete to a man battling addiction and facing incarceration, to who he is today, living in his passion as he uses his relatable experiences to help others with their addiction recovery. But this episode is special because Eddy isn't just a guest, he's my fiancé. In this episode, we're pulling back the curtain on how two people with heavy pasts did the work to find healthy love separately and together. If you've ever felt like your past mistakes disqualify you from a healthy, happy future, this episode is going to prove you wrong. Get ready to believe in love again. Eddy Anderson, welcome to today's episode of Let's Heal. How are you today?
I am doing great. It's a beautiful Saturday afternoon, and just to have the chance to welcome you to Brave Hearts TV and the Brave Hearts audience, and just knowing how much work you put in to get into this point and what your heart is for helping people heal through trauma. I am happy to be here and happy to be participating with you.
Yeah, it's an exciting day
It
today
is.
because we are recording the very first episode of the show that is airing on the Brave Hearts TV network. And that's exciting for me because it is me carrying out my mission to get my God-given message of you too can heal to as many people on this earth as I can reach. And we're starting with expanding on TV. It's an exciting day.
Yes, it is. I
Yes.
agree with you 100%.
And it's also very exciting because you are my guest today.
So you never know what God has in store for you or me or us. I've talked on a few podcasts before, but never in this platform with someone that I am as close to as I am to you.
Yes.
So
Yeah. It's taken a little while to get to this episode. When I first met you just over a year ago, I thought, wow, you'd be a great guest for this show. And then our relationship has evolved.
right, I would
And
say evolve is understatement, but
yes,
right.
it is. It was clear to me early on that you would be a perfect guest on the show because you fill the type of guests that I have who have stories of suffering, a lot of deep suffering in their life, but then they go on and have the opportunity to heal and find their way to a more joyous life. And
Right.
that's you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So you are that type of guest?
Yes, I agree with that that statement about my life. So, it's taken a lot of work internally to get to a point to where you feel like you're on the road to wellness, and If you look back over my life, I'm from Dallas. My mother was an English teacher. My dad worked at the post office. I went to private school, played college football. And from the outside, it appeared that, the natural progression was happening.
Hmm.
But internally and inside, my home, I battled some trauma, sexual abuse. I battled just not feeling right in my own skin. And the way that it manifests itself externally is that I became really proficient at sports. So that arena was where I received the claps on the back. And I learned that if I performed well enough, that would kind of offset some of the things that were happening as I was growing up. And I'm also an only child. So I also had that syndrome. So, I mean, it was, I grew up kind of in a privileged environment, and that masked a lot of my insecurities as I went through high school and even into college. And then, my story also includes, being addicted to drugs. It includes contact with the criminal justice system. It includes suicide attempts. It includes just the back and forth of trying to beat an addiction, trying to function in society, thinking in your mind that, you're moving towards being your best, but your actions not backing that up. And many disappointments, looking into my mother's eyes, hearing those dreaded words, "You can't come here." That a lot of people who battle addiction have heard those words from people that loved them and wanted the best for them, but your lifestyle was just not compatible with their values and what they were trying to accomplish. And sometimes the best love is a tough love, right? So, my story encompasses all of that. And, in meeting you and one of the first things I saw when I saw your profile, right? Because we are a dating profile matrimony.
Yes.
One of the things when I saw your profile and I saw the Empowered Survivors, something just spoke to me that this person might understand and I might have a deeper connection with this person based on her life's trajectory and some of the things that I've been to. It was a little daunting, right? Because it's one thing to be vulnerable with someone who doesn't understand, because a lot of things just go right under the table. But to be vulnerable with someone who is going through the process themselves and speaks your language, then that's a whole nother level.
Yeah, you can't mess around with that conversation.
So,
Not much you can hide.
So,
not much you can hide.
I think that's a pretty accurate portrayal of, kind of what it was like to meet you for the first time, and accurate portrayal of my life. Every road has come together to put me in the place that I am in today.
Yes.
And I'm grateful for that.
That's true for every single one of us. Same for me, being here with you today. Yeah. So just talk for a minute about how we met. So I should say, I should finish the bit about the type of guest you are. So we are going to talk about the work that you do to help other people to heal, because you are that type of person as well, where you are taking your lived experience and giving that to other people who are also suffering currently to try to help them to heal. So you're a healer. That's how I would see you.
Okay.
You are that type of guest.
Okay, I agree with that.
And you're also part of my story. So you cover all three of the types of conversations that we have on this show, which is why it took me a little bit to work out how I get you here and what we're going to talk about today. But I think we've figured it out.
Well, we're going full speed ahead.
We are. I want to ask you a question though before we talk about. We'll talk about your work first, and then we'll talk about more about how we met and where we are today. Your mom, in particular, because there's that phrase that I've used quite often that hurt people, but healed people, heal people. And you've had some experiences rebuilding your relationship with your mom recently, where we've seen her healing along the way as a result of the work that you're doing. Talk about that.
Well, I will say that, man, anybody who knows me knows that I love my mother, and that, you know,
Mama's boy, as it's
yeah,
been
I,
called
I would I
recently.
would cut off my right arm for my mom.
Yeah.
But that love never equated to me working towards wellness in our relationship. So my mom was always an advocate of, son, your destiny is not tied to what you're doing.
Mm.
And even in my lowest moments where my behavior, the consequences of my behavior landed me in institutions, or as I said, with contact with the criminal justice system, my mom still had that light in her eye when she talked to me. And so that was something that I kind of, always just held on to in the back of my mind. But uh, as I began to work towards, God has more for me than what I'm currently doing. My mom came in and talked to me, and her exact words were, son, secrets have been killing our family. Right. And this was, I was, 52 maybe at this
Mm-hmm.
time. And, she told me that, um, that my heritage wasn't what it had been presented all these years. So, I looked at her and just, a piece of me broke. And I told her that I've been alone all my life. But that was kind of a reaction just to intense pain.
Mm-hmm.
And then, I looked at her and I thought, man, she's been carrying this for longer than I've been alive. And it just opened my heart up and just said, man, you can do better. You can be better. Whatever it takes, and it's going to take action to words, but I knew that I needed some therapy. And so getting to the point, I still went back and forth with drug use, building my life up and turning it down, and, just still in that insecure spot of not really believing what God has set me, the course that God has set me on.
Mm.
I didn't really believe it.
Yeah.
I would put a foot in,
Yeah.
but then I'd take the foot out. And so one of the things that really trans transformed my life and my relationship with my mother is that I found myself a few years ago at the Men of Nehemiah. Mm-hmm. And that facility is military, it's Christian based and counseling. And at Men of Nehemiah, they provided the space for my mom and I to do family counseling. And as a black man and as a man, counseling and therapy are new territories. Like we're still evolving towards that, especially me being an athlete.
Yeah.
Having a space to talk to someone about what's happening internal hasn't always been a part of my psyche, right? So at Men of Nehemiah, they provided a space for family counseling. My mom committed to come into the family counseling, and she walked in, and the first thing she said to me is, son, you don't have to lie to me anymore. When you are not doing well, you can come to me. When you're doing well, which is what you usually do, you come to me when you're doing well and try to create this perfect picture like everything's okay.
Yeah.
She said, you can come to me when you're not doing well. Now, you can't come to me when you're on drugs, right?
Yeah.
But you can come to me when you're not doing well, and hopefully we can shortstop you going to that space, that place. And so we spent 10 sessions together, and we talked about everything. And we had a therapist there with us. And mom, although she is a very loving person, she is not afraid to be direct. Mm-hmm. And so we just kind of bounced back and forth, just things that happened in my childhood, how my behavior had impacted her, how her trying to live a life and just doing the best that she could, because she's from, Marshall, Texas, old country town, and she was the first in the family to ascend to college and the masters, teach. She's been the matriarch of the family. and her trying to live in that role has been difficult for her. And so we just talked about all of that. And through that process, I finally found a little peace that it was palpable. I could feel it. Like something had changed. Yeah. Something had changed. And so, I've stayed sober since that time, which now I think I have 2.5 years or about that time. And I decided during this point, so I've been, in management at different places. I've always been kind of pursuing a dollar. And, about 1.5 years ago, I decided to make a pivot that I wanted to work in recovery. And I thought, with my life, my story, and, I've caught football passes in front of 80,000 people, and I've been put out of a drug house saying, you ain't got no more money, get out of here. So I've run the full gamut of life experiences. And I thought the best way that I could sustain my sobriety, this peace that I have found, my relationship with God, and to be a human that contributes to this community, I thought the best way to accomplish that was to work in recovery. Yeah. And so I started out working with the homeless population, and then here recently transitioned to working at a treatment center where I see people who are just at the beginning stages of trying to get off drugs and put together a plan to become more functional human beings. And so it's very rewarding.
Yeah. Yeah. The experience at Men of Nehemiah, which I've had a couple of other guys from the program have been guests ahead of you. Just again, me trying to work out exactly what type of a guest you were on this show.
You have to wait your turn sometimes, right?
For the right time. This is the right time. This is the right time for you to be here. But I have a lot of love for that program, and a lot of that is really about you. And, and you coming through that program successfully and being the person who you are now. But it really, what I observe about that program for you and other men who come through it successfully, is it really is a microcosm of what it truly means to heal. And the way that I understand the word heal, which is behind me, the hope, evolve, and love. And that's because that place is all about inspiring hope through God and God's presence. And then there's the evolving part, which is what you've talked a bit about with your mom, and that is the therapeutic aspect to really dig down inside of us to figure out who are we and why have we been behaving the way that we've been behaving? What happened to us and how has it affected us? How are we living our lives as a result of that? And I think they're really good at that part of it and giving you the tools and the opportunity to be able to do that evolution part within yourself. And then it's also, I think, maybe one of the first places that a lot of men who go there experience truly unconditional love, but also God's love. And hopefully through that find self-love in that process.
I think you hit it right on the head. So the Men of Nehemiah offers discipline. It offers a brotherhood, and you see the people in the churches that are tied to Men of Nehemiah. Just you see God working, and I'm no different from anybody else who showed up at Men of Nehemiah. Like, I did not show up on a winning streak. I think before Men of Nehemiah, I was working, teaching a life skills class in prisons. And somehow I still felt like a fraud, even though I was a free man who was going back into prisons, trying to encourage men to take another path. I still didn't feel wholly put together. I still kind of felt like I was a fraud a little bit because I knew inside that that knot was still twisted up inside me. And it doesn't matter what you do, if you don't untwist that knot, your effectiveness, your self-esteem will remain in that space. And so, I didn't show up at Men of Nehemiah thinking that I was going to change anything, or they needed to listen to me, or I was this X person or that. I showed up at Nehemiah defeated. And I found that Nehemiah gave me the discipline. Yep, they gave me the discipline, the repetitiveness of it, the taking instruction. At 56 or 57, you think you know a lot.
We do think we know a lot.
And I can tell you how I'm going to get sober, which in itself is, a statement that is untrue. So I consider going through me and Nehemiah to be a blessing, one of my biggest blessings. And it repaired the relationship that I have with my mother. And I never considered us to have a bad relationship, but we just didn't have a relationship that was based on truth. And a relationship that's not based on truth is fraudulent in itself.
Yeah, and you mentioned secrets when you were talking about your mom earlier. And one of the things that you and I realized very early when we met is that despite the fact that we have obvious differences, never mind just gender and skin color, despite that, there's a whole lot more about us that's the same than is different.
Right.
And I think that's true. Suffering is a human condition that we all experience, and then having a life that's joyful after that requires us to heal, right? And that is the underlying similarity of both of us. But there are very fine points to those similarities. So you mentioned secrets, destroying the family. That's where I come from, a family that has lived with secrets and all kind of stuff that's coming out now, more secrets that seems to be making its way to the surface to come into the light. But those definitely are very destructive and cause a lot of pain and suffering for us when we come from those kind of families.
Right. I would say that, some people are built like that. Some people are built to carry secrets and they'll go to their grave with them.
Yes.
I wasn't built like that, and you aren't built like that. And
so
for us who have a different mechanism inside of us that causes us to push the stop button or self-destruct button and so on, we need something other than secrets as a way of living.
Yes. Yeah, and in fact, my very human design on this earth to bring truth to secrets and light to darkness. It's literally why I'm here.
Right. So
yes, So let's talk for a little bit. Just keep going with the work that you're doing in recovery, because that's sort of the part of your own sobriety, your own recovery. But it also, I think, is because as you're what I call a pain to purpose person, and it's very clear, at least to me, being an observer from the outside, that so much of what you've been through in your life is about creating relatability to people who you can genuinely serve, but people who are really in that rock bottom place. They are in the depth of their suffering, which is where you're working to reach them. So talk a little bit about that.
So one of the things that I have been tasked to do is I will spend time speaking to different groups of people, from athletes to people who have been incarcerated to people who are in the AA or people who are in drug treatment. I believe that my story resonates with each of those groups because my lived experience has touched all of these different aspects of life. And one thing I say to people, if I can get sober, anybody can get sober, right? Because, you put drugs in me and I turn into the Tasmanian devil. But off of drugs, I'm fully functioning, fully capable, and capable of having healthy relationships. So I try to, through a little humor, and I will tell my story not as if I'm on a pedestal. I will tell my story from the bottom up. And I talk about things that resonate, being an athlete and the selfishness from being catered to all of your life, how the struggle to overcome that is sometimes pretty tough, and just or being someone who was formerly incarcerated, and then you're gonna have to, there are doors you're gonna have to walk through. You're gonna be told no, and you have to not spin out, not deregulate, when you hear no, because that's just a part of life. Or, family situations. Although I love my mother dearly, my relationship with my daughter needs work. And so, just dealing with the fact that as you get better doesn't mean that your family or your friends are going to see you in this new light.
That's right.
Because them looking at you in a new space means that they also have to look at themselves
100%.
in a new space, right?
Yes.
And people are reluctant to do that.
Yes, they are.
And so when you are in recovery and you think, you get on this pink cloud where I'm getting better, why won't someone talk to me? Or why won't someone come along for the journey? And we've used that phrase, right?
Yes.
They won't come along with the journey. Mm-hmm. How do you deal with that? How do you process that? How do you stay regulated and stay on task and keep your vision moving forward? And so I talked to them about that. And then I just, I have a playful personality. I can be serious, but if you give me a chance, I will play. And so, I just try to, there is joy waiting to be had. And, when we are in those spaces where we are hurt or we are depressed, we won't get out of our own way. I just try to remind them they just stay the course, put one foot in front of the other, practice some of the principles and the skills that they are taught, embrace their relationship with God, live for a higher calling, that the miracle will happen. And I believe that with all my heart. And I believe that I am an example of it.
I believe that with all my heart, too, because I'm also an example.
Right.
And I think for us, we're an example.
And I'll just say, just to you, in getting to know you, one of the things that I admire is that you work at it, like, and you're not like tied to the results. Like your work is internal, and every day you get up and you're like, I'm going to inspire somebody, I'm going to empower somebody, and it makes me want to get up. Right? I got to get up and get out of here because I know Beth is on it today.
Yeah.
And so, I've seen you just walk through things that people who are not evolved or not healed, it will set them back.
Yeah.
And I've seen you navigate those things, and I have drawn strength from it. So, just brave heart, just, we're having a moment right here, but understand.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for saying that. I do work it. I do work it every day. We've talked about this. Maybe healing is a journey, and it is a lifelong journey, unless you want to become a hermit or crawl into a bottle or become homeless and yourself on the street. And that's because if there is a destination on the healing journey, it's love, and love is about human connection. And sometimes love is hard, and sometimes love is great. And when we have relationships where it's hard to love people who are difficult, challenging, that's going to cause us to be healing all the time as we work through the interactions that we have with those people. And I live it. I'm living it on an ongoing basis now as I try to continue to work on, the relationship with my family. It's not easy. And I am constantly in a healing process. And that's true for all of us. But I am seeking, my desire to continue to do that work is grounded in really, really wanting to experience love in a good way. Yes, you too can heal, and I'm here to show you how. Download my free Healing Quick Start Guide at empoweredsurvivors.com/heal. And congratulations on taking your first step toward transforming your deepest wounds into your greatest strengths.
I think you're doing a bang job.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
I'm inspired by you, and just reaching out to the Empowered Survivors community. I feel joy, and I feel like this is something that is changing the world. And so, I support you, and I sometimes hitch my wagon to you as well.
I follow. I don't really have much choice about what I do now. it's God's work through me,
Mm-hmm.
right? With my message and my You Too Can Heal message. Yeah, I'm doing what God wants me to do. I believe. I think
Right.
I am, and you're part of that.
All right. So, can I ask you a question?
Of course.
So in this healing journey, like,
Yes.
we talked about how we got together.
Mhm. Which
Um,
we're going to talk about a little bit more because it's got some funny stories to it, or
okay.
some
Well,
interesting
I
stories
won't
to it.
ask you a
No,
question. Then
ask
go
me.
ahead.
No, ask me.
I was
No, ask
just,
me. Ask me.
you have mentioned having a list, a points list,
Yeah.
and I'd just like to hear you go back over
Oh, all right.
that.
Good take. Well, you're kind of alluding to what the story is, because we've talked a little bit about your journey when you're talking about the recovery and the work that you did at Men of Nehemiah with your mom, and about 2.5 years sober now. That's
Hmm.
all very recent, but it really seems like it's the healing work that is really the game changer for you in getting your life to the point where it is now, and on the road to thriving in your life,
Right,
right? No more
right.
suffering, right? And I don't mean you're not going to have a hard day here or there, difficult relationships. You mentioned relationship with your daughter, but the deep, deep, deep day in, day out suffering, the really dark places that you've been, hopefully those are behind
Oh
you,
yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. And so while you were doing that work, I was in my own healing journey. Now, I wasn't in the part at that time. I had come through the really dark part of my healing journey before you got into doing that same work for yourself. But the part of my healing journey that I was working on in that, we've known each other for a year now. So in that year and a half before we met, when you were doing your work, mine was really about getting to the place where I could have a chance of even seeing you as my
Right.
partner, right? And God's gift, and that's how I know you now is your God's gift to me for the work that I have done on my healing journey, and I really genuinely believe that. But the work for me in that year before we met was going through a series of dating relationships with men who I now know to be, and I've talked about them being my awakeners.
Hmm.
And there were a series of them that taught me about the qualities and characteristics of the man who I was looking for. And none of them encompassed all of those, but I had some very profound realizations in the relationships with them, right? In the time in the relationship, I'll use that loosely, the time that I spent with them, which none of them, I think the longest one was maybe 8 weeks, 10 weeks. But it was, it was things like understanding, that I needed to be with someone who had a depth of spirituality, but open-minded about spirituality, because that's me. I have an evolving
Right.
spiritual journey, and I've been all over this world, experienced all kinds of different faiths and ways that people connect to God. And I'm very firm in my connection to God. And I needed to be with someone who would allow me to be open in the way that I connect with God, but also it's clear someone who was going to bring me back around into exploring more the person who Jesus was
Right.
for
Right.
purposes of being my role model, so that I can emulate in my desire to know what it truly means to love another human being. There's no greater role model this world has ever seen than Jesus. And
Mm.
you've been part of helping me get back to church and exploring that and reading the Bible again and learning about
Hmm.
Jesus and
Hmm.
all of that, right? So I learned that from this one human being, that I needed that, but that's all that he could give me and teach me, right? And so it was stops like that along the way that by Thanksgiving of 2024, right around the end of November, I had written, like if you look at my journal for 2025, the first 2 pages are that list of
Mm.
qualities and characteristics. And then, there were a few other things that had to happen, because all those men that I was dating were white. That's where my
Right.
my focus had been. But that is what that was about, was getting into that place where I knew the heart, as I've said to you, the heart that I was looking.
So I have a question for you real quick. So, most lists are created to exclude people, not necessarily to include people. So when you wrote your list,
Yes.
were you excluding or where you seeking to include someone in your life? And does that speak to the healing process that you've
It's a great
undertaken,
question. It's a
taking
great question.
these last few years?
My list was about, I think about broadening the qualities and characteristics of the person who I was looking for. So by adding to it, I would say I was getting broader in what I was looking at. The thing about my list is there's nothing physical or material on my list. It truly is about the inner being of who the person is, the heart. So that's kind of how I wrap all that up, is in the heart. I had been through a process of starting with a long list of no's. So I had already been in the place of
Exclusion, okay.
exclude, right? And I was really good at seeing an exclusionary quality and saying I'm out. And that actually, in fact, is a lot of the reason why the Awakeners didn't stay around.
Right.
Because either they had a quality that I didn't want any part of, or we were just not meshing because I was probably being exclusionary in the way that I was behaving, right?
Okay.
But the inclusive part, I said, so the exclusionary part for me, and this is an interesting series of events that happened to me right before I met you. That was literally God eliminating an unconscious bias that I was carrying that I didn't even know that I had. And that unconscious bias had me focused only on white men. And when I realized what I was doing, it was like a eureka moment for me when I realized that that's what was happening, because all of a sudden that pool of candidates for me got like 70. I was like, I'm excluding like 80% of the world's population. Right. I'm excluding because I had this unconscious bias that had me focused on white men. Right. And I had some very interesting events that happened in the fall of 2024. And I'm actually I have a note card here with them because I didn't want to forget what they were, but I'm just going to tick them off quickly to this point about getting rid of the unconscious bias. So I had someone who said to me early in the fall that the man that I was going to meet and be with would be someone who had, excuse my language, quote unquote, been through some shit, meaning they'd gone through a lot in their life. And part of that was because I needed someone who had some depth to them, not a boring individual. If there's anything, I could never, ever call you boring. Right. There's not anything that's boring about you. That is for sure. So you definitely have that depth that I need. I had an astrocartography reading, which astrocartography is about where in the world that your energy best aligns, like where you are in your highest vibrational frequencies energetically by being in a certain place in the world. And that guy told me that he felt like the person who I was going to be with was dark skinned. And I was like, okay, interesting. Right. And I kind of heard that and moved on from it. It was the first time that I had heard that. And then not too long after that, I had a tarot card reading. Where the whole theme of the tarot card reading was that I had a block that I needed to deal with. And I was really frustrated. I remember being very, very frustrated that night because, and I was like, God, a block? Like I've uncleared so many blocks because I'd been on this long healing journey already. And I'd worked to get rid of so many things that were constraining me from living my life and really thriving. I was like, how can there be another significant block that I have to get rid of? And I'm going to tell this about the card because of what you've said, but the tarot card reading that night, when it began, she put a card down facing me that she told me was me. And then there were a bunch of cards around me as she was saying different things about them and explaining this block that I have. But the very last card that she turned up, that she laid across my card, was the image of a dark-skinned man behind bars. And of course, at the time, I'm just frustrated about this block. And, now I can connect all these dots looking back about what God was leading me through and telling me was coming and preparing me for. And it was about 2 weeks after that I went out on a couple of dates with a black man. And when I first discovered him on Facebook's dating app, because that's where I was looking to meet people, I couldn't tell anything about his physical characteristics. His profile picture was probably like photo stock. of someone who's skiing taking from the back. And so it could have been Yoda in the
Right.
picture for all I know, right? And, he had very limited information on the profile, but it was the exchange with me, the kind of text exchange with me that got me to meet him. And as we're going through the text exchange to meet, he says, "Oh, by the way, I'm a tall black man," which I just went right past. And I was like, okay, and kept going. And then I met him, had a couple of dates with him. Clearly not my person. He's the one that I call Mr. False Pretenses when I talk about my Awakeners, because everything about him was a false pretense that he told me. Like, I don't even think I know what the guy's name actually was. But that's when I had my epiphany moment. And he said something to me in our second meeting. He said to me, he'd asked me if I'd ever dated a person of color before, and I was like, I never have. And he said, "Well, I don't want to be a white girl's first experiment." And I was like, what does that mean, my first experiment? But what it caused me to do was to really think about, why are there no men of color coming through my dating profile? Like, they'd all been white.
Mm-hmm.
And that caused me to really ponder the question, which something that scared me. And I was actually a little bit disgusted with myself that I was even having the conversation with myself, but about whether or not I was racist or prejudiced. And, I had to do the excavation work, the inner deep work, to evolve myself and to understand why I had this unconscious block. And it actually goes back to something that I experienced when I was in high school with my father. It was an interaction with him that literally made me just cut that off. So I had wanted to.
So something from your childhood.
Something from my childhood. And really, the unconscious bias came as a protective mechanism so that I never had to deal with that reaction from my father again, which was not a good reaction in a similar situation. I wanted to take a schoolmate who was a black guy to Sadie Hawkins dance, and my dad completely rejected the notion in a pretty difficult way, and it was painful, and I never wanted to experience that with him again, and so I blocked it.
So it was a protective mechanism, as you stated.
Yes.
Which, it's funny. So for me, going to the high school I went to was predominantly all white. Mm-hmm. Playing football in college, it was blacks and whites and everything. And just in my sphere, people have always just been people. And, I haven't really seen colors. We all have our prejudices and our biases. But I can say that me seeing you, I just saw you as a beautiful woman, right?
Yeah.
And I've never really bought into the black and white or Hispanic thing. I've, pretty much went where I wanted, dated who I wanted, mm-hmm. and I'm a kick door to all those stereotypes. But when you told me about, just your prior experience, and the tarot cards and everything, so I'm a little more religiously conservative, right? But I think that, just God has people for us. He has places for us that are already set along the path. Yes. And when people are meant to find each other, they find each other. I have a story. Before I went to Nehemiah, I was on the bus, mm-hmm. and it was just me and the bus driver. And I was talking to myself like, somebody who was not in the right mind. Mm-hmm. But what I was saying was, I got to get my life together. I got to get my life together. And this bus driver turns around and she tells me this story about how she was gambling so bad 6 months ago that she got on her knees and she said, "God, please take this from me." And 6 months later, she was driving the bus for Dart. And she said, if God can impact my life like that, he can impact your life. Yeah. And so I'm saying that when God has your person, it's just a matter of time before you meet him.
Just a matter of time. And that's what our story is. We both know that. Yes. Absolutely. And by the way, the tarot card reading and all these things that I experience, it's just how God speaks to me. And I'm not a person who believes that God's way of communicating with us is in a box. God can communicate with me any way that God wants to, because God created all of it.
Right.
And that's just my openness to receiving the messaging any way that it comes. So people like tarot cards, that's kind of weird. But I have an experience with a tarot card reading that I just described, where God told me two things. You got a block you've got to deal with. I'm going to help you to unblock it. I'm going to put you on the path. And at the end of that block, there's a black man waiting for you. Well, literally, that's what God told me. Well, now, I didn't know it in the tarot card reading, but as I look back now, that's what God was telling me. And it was fast, right? I mean, it was so quick, those series of events that happened, and it was all within a couple of months. And after I finished the work with Mr. False Pretenses, the first black man, and had done the work to really understand the unconscious bias and had this awakening, like this massive epiphany, like I've literally been excluding 75% of the potential candidates for me out there, which, the timing of that was great, because I was becoming very frustrated with the candidate pool that I was looking at. And then all of a sudden, here comes Eddy Anderson.
And I want Braveheart TV to know that we eliminated the rest of the pool of candidates as soon as we met.
Yes, it's very quick.
Yes.
It was very quick eliminating all of the other candidates. So we both eliminated all the other candidates. Yes. And in fact, in a couple of weeks, we're getting married.
Yes, February 21st. Oh. And so one of the things that I learned over, the time of being out of harmony with community is that I would say, you've heard this before, you left me, whether it was family members, you left me to my own devices. And one of the things that I now think is that the people in our community have not left us. We leave them. We leave them.
We do.
And so understanding that now today, I try to make sure that I am in harmony with my community, with my friends, with my family, by my actions. And so as a result of changing my perspective, not holding grudges or resentments against people, because the onus has been on me. I'm the one that's gone out of communion. And so one of the results of that is that I've been able to reestablish relationships with a lot of people that I love. And one of those relationships is a friend of mine named Ben Loeb, who is a classical musician. He's actually been nominated for a Grammy in the classical division. And he is going to play a couple of songs at our wedding, which is fantastic. So I say that to say that February 21st is going to be a special day. I'm going to try to hold it together, Braveheart.
We both are.
All right. This calm demeanor, I'll try to hold it together. But there's to get to a place where I can love a woman and allow a woman inside enough to love me has been one of the greatest benefits of going through this process. Because in my past, even though I presented an image I thought, where, the outside package looked decent, I told you, as I mentioned before, I always still kind of felt like a fraud. So my behavior would be, I'm going to leave before they leave me.
Yeah.
And so, it resulted in just short-term relationships all the time. And the fact that the evidence shows that I've gotten to a place in life to where I'm comfortable with myself. I'm with one woman, and I'm committed to spending the rest of my life with that woman, and my actions match my words. I mean, I've had to have healed in some regard, right? And that's the proof, that's the evidence that I need to continue along this journey. That, it's an everyday process. We got to work at it. But February 21st will be concrete evidence that
Yes.
my purpose, your purpose has aligned with God,
Yeah.
and we are entering
That's
into the
exactly
holy
right.
matrimony.
Yeah.
Right. So
I was just chuckling there because I was thinking about when you were talking earlier, what you just said now about having that, feeling a little bit like a fraud in the past before you did the deep healing work. It's funny because I'm a fraud investigator. It's what I did for 20 plus years, right? So there wasn't,
right.
and I figured out a lot about you very, very fast.
Yes.
In fact, you didn't even have to really tell me a whole lot about your story.
Right.
There were,
We have
obviously parts that you've shared some of it publicly, and I
Mhm.
found a lot of that stuff very quickly because of that's who I am. That's what I do. And in some ways, I think it made it easier because you didn't have to take me through all the different steps. There were just some things that I had some questions about, but ultimately, what I cared about was that you were into and on the healing journey. And I could see that very quickly. And the rest of it didn't matter, but you weren't, that's all that stuff. Before you find out all that stuff, it was quick that I knew that within a couple days.
Some of that stuff has eliminated me in the past. So there was always a little angst about how is this going to play. But you were confident, and I could tell that you were at a point in life where you were willing to give me a chance.
Yes.
And so
and remember that I also already been told, God told me the person for you is going to have been through some stuff in their life, and that's you.
So our wedding, we're getting married February 21st. I have people from my sober community that are going to be in the wedding, people from my high school community, people from my college community. And you're going to have your bridesmaids, and they're coming from all over the world.
My entire life
and
as well.
They represent your entire life. And so to have the significance of all of that is all of the worlds coming together, meshing to provide evidence that we are worthy of happiness and worthy of each other.
Yes.
And it's going to be, I'm looking forward to it.
Me too. I am too. Yeah, it's going to be a great day. And it is evidence of our healings. And another one of the similarities that we have is while you're pushing people out of your life was from a place of addiction, mine was from a place of starting with what I know to be the parenectomy, but eventually I cast everybody out of my life. It's one of the things that they teach at Men of Nehemiah, that the opposite of addiction is connection, relationships. And I think it's not, addiction, when I think about that, I'm thinking about it in all different forms, even what I did, right? And, arguably one of my coping mechanisms was to be a busyholic and chronic chaos, right? So arguably that was my addiction, but just pushing people out of my life.
Isolation.
It was the same thing. I had no connection and no relationships. And I had done that, every bit of that, right? Same as what you're saying, right? But the joy in this, and I think what's evident for both of us, and evidence of the healing journeys that we've taken and doing the really intentional and focused work, is that we have all these people that we've pulled back into our lives or still have the connections with, because as you said, they never left us, we left them. But they love us enough to still be here in our lives. So it's not us celebrating our union, but just celebrating the fact that we have all these people with us still, despite the lives that we've led. And it's also a great testament to the work that we've done to be in this place.
Well, I will just add that one of the things about isolation, so when we isolate, we are putting ourselves in a position to where we do not have to be accountable to anybody. And it's on a, we isolate and we're not even accountable to God. And so when you move past that and you bring all of these people back into community and harmony with your existence, then you're also saying, I'm willing to be accountable to you. Because when you have people in your lives, they're going to point out things. Oh, no, that's not a good idea.
Yeah.
Or you said you were going to do this, but you did that. I mean, it's just a natural ebb and flow of being in a relationship with somebody. And so, I encourage those people who are isolating for a protective, cautionary reason to man, just put one foot in front of the other and walk towards community.
Mm-hmm.
And out of that isolation, you will find that there is a village that is waiting to support you.
Yes, that is true.
Like no man or woman is an island unto themselves.
Yeah, and that is the experience that we've both had.
And so,
Yeah.
well, let's talk about some of the joyous things that's happened over the year,
Okay.
over this past year,
What do you
right?
want to talk about? Okay.
So let's see. We took a trip to the Bahamas.
We did.
Right.
And by the way, we did that because that was part of the "Do I like you or not?" There are things about you that I can that I need to know now, and I think it's one of my greatest pieces of dating advice is to take the person out of their comfort zone into a whole new element where they can't fall back on what's comfortable to them. Yeah. It went very well.
Yes, aside from the fact that we were at a beach and, I don't exactly need a tan or anything, so I had to busy myself. But so that was a great experience. First time that I had been to the Bahamas. And
first cruise for both of us.
First cruise for both of us. We also got to go to some football games.
Yes.
I know someone in the Kansas City Chiefs organization, and we were able to just go up and enjoy sideline passes and see all of the Chiefs, right?
That was a lot of fun.
And then we went to my college and caught a game, and so we've gone to plays. We've gone to movies.
Lots of movies. Big 12 championship.
Went to the Big 12 championship. So we've done things together that have ushered in new life, new possibilities, and we're going to experience everything that God has for us. That's so, exactly right. I've met your friends. I met your cousins. I met your nephews. My mother calls you daughter-in-love, yes. Right? Can you believe that? My daughter-in-love. So, we do have some pockets of resistance, but I mean, we're not immune to the different things that happen in life as we walk forward, right? So we're just going to deal with those things as best we can, and we're gonna commit to not making the situation any harder than it already is. Yes. And so, I wish my family, was in total communion, but unfortunately, some of the consequences of my past life, this is where, I am right now. But, and I say the same thing to you, like, we are committed to being loving, functional, healthy human beings.
Yes.
And we are committed to working towards wellness with our community, whether it's our family, whether it's our church, whether it's an alternative religion, whether it's in business, whether it's with Braveheart. We are committed together to moving towards wellness.
Yes, we are.
And that's my statement.
Staying on our healing journeys, what I said before, right? Healing is a lifelong process that we go through, right? I mean, it just got to keep going. And, there are challenges. You got your family challenges. I alluded to family challenges that I still have. I mean, a sad thing about, really sad. I mean, I've just come to accept it, but, it is possible that some of my family won't be there to celebrate with us, and that's a choice that they're making. It's an unfortunate choice, one that I don't understand, but that's on them, not on me. And my job is to focus on me and my wellness, right, and not on them, and let God do what God's doing in their lives.
I look at it and say it'll be the right time, it'll be the right place.
Yes, that's exactly right. Yeah.
But all in all, I would say that 2025 was a very good year.
2025 is my best year yet, and 2026 is going to be an even better year. It's already starting off that way.
Yes.
So, yeah. All right. Thank you so much for doing this episode with me.
It was a pleasure to introduce myself,
Yeah.
and to kind of just go on this platform with you. I'm hoping that we will have conversations moving forward
Yeah.
on different topics and everything. But this is a kind of a way to introduce the evidence of how we have worked over the past year and what we hope to accomplish moving forward. So, I know that you do this from your heart.
Yes.
You don't do it for a monetary gain. You don't do it for publicity or fame. Like, you are genuinely wanting to implore people.
Yes.
That you can move past being dysfunctional, being self-destructive, suffering. You can move past all of that. And so, I hope that this is a platform that receives you, and a year from now, you're reaching millions of people.
That's my goal. That's what I'm after. That's why I am today taking the step to go on to Brave Hearts TV. So it's a great time. Thanks again for being here today, Eddy. Mm-hmm. And as I say to you every time, keep healing. I hope you have enjoyed today's episode of Let's Heal with Beth Jones. If you did, please subscribe to my YouTube channel at Beth Jones Healing Mentor. And if you'd like to know more about me and my work to help other survivors to heal, please visit me on the web at empoweredsurvivors.com.